Hello, loves. Today I'm going to do a divine feminine building self-trust video. There's been a lot of different comments and messages and topics coming up, and it feels like one of the most beneficial things I can share is a bit of perspective. Now, divine feminines are here to really work with embodying the new ways of being. Many have those encoded within their heart and within themselves, but we're also living on a planet that we've learned how to operate and live and function and survive in a certain type of way. And when you couple that with these connections and working with the mirror of a masculine and a divine masculine energy, who's mirroring different layers back to you, sometimes from a physical world where he may be more in his human masculine habits and information, and then working with his higher divine sacred essence and energy mirroring to you sort of that pathway to the higher way of being. You're working with multiple mirrors, and this is important and also relevant to actually supporting your process of moving from living within the old structures and confines and moving into the more new earth ways of being. And that it can feel, I know sometimes it feels confusing because you have the ways that you were taught, and then you have the new concepts that you're being told you're meant to embody. But there's like this space in between where it can actually be really important to hold both, sort of like both are true. And I would like you to look at this, if this resonates, of course, as sort of this is an important part of the process of the bridging, of moving from the ways of being into the new. And the reason you're not completely collapsing all of the old concepts and only moving into a new way of being is because there are things of value in the old structures, in the ways that we were functioning and living as a society, but also there's parts of that that are going to support you with actually bridging into the new ways of being. And this is the embodiment process. Okay. And so think of it sort of like when you're going through this process and you start learning new things. It's like, imagine you're in a building, you just bought this huge building, you've never been in it, and you go to the first door, and this is the equivalent of finding your first video on Ascension. And you get some keys that you needed. And so that unlocks the first door. Okay. So you have this new door and this new room and this new pocket of energy that you're working with and you're exploring. And it's supportive for you in that time. But as you keep growing, you're gonna outgrow that room and say that you're looking around and say there's like three more doors to exit out of that specific room. And so now you need another key to go to the next room. There's multiple options, but this is where you trust yourself. Like, okay, I'll try this door. So you get that key, that code, that video, that perspective. You try it out, right? You go into the next room, you work with it, you see if that fits for you, you gain what you can out of it, and then maybe you go back to the original room and then you go through one of the other doors, or you just keep going, right? I guess my whole point is it doesn't have to be a specific way because you are your own unique self. So the specific guidance you receive, the videos, the people, the places, the things are going to look different from everyone else's specific path, right? So I can't give you a specific map to say, oh, you have to go in this room and then this room and then that room. Like flowing true evolution energy does not operate in that manner, okay? It can, to some degree, it can be like a map, but ultimately there's going to be times that you're called to go your own way off the beaten path. Okay. So if that happens, that's where the self-trust is going to be important. And you might not know exactly where it's going to go. You might not know where that room is going to lead. Maybe no one went in that room. That's okay. All right. I don't I want to stay on course with my point. My point is that you might learn something and it's valuable. Okay, an example could be where you're in the process and every video that's coming up in your feed and every person you're talking to is like, stop focusing on divine masculine, start focusing on yourself. So you start to adjust your energy to focusing on yourself. And for a time, you might find that you're almost freezing or walling off your thoughts of the masculine so that you can retrain yourself to focus on yourself. But then as you start going, you might find that thoughts of him or your experience are coming up. Now, it's so much more about the frequency that you're in. This doesn't mean that it's necessary for you to freeze off your thoughts of the masculine. It's about checking in with what you're doing with those thoughts, right? Are you ruminating on it? Are you obsessing about it? Are you focusing only on what he's doing and not your part of it? Or are you thinking about him in the process and you're thinking about what you experienced and now you're learning how you can evolve, what you could do better, what you can learn from the experience and how you can grow? You see what I mean? But if you only freeze it all the way off and never allow yourself to process what your subconscious is asking you to process, well, you might get stuck in that room. You see what I'm saying? It doesn't mean that the message you received about not focusing on the divine masculine was wrong or bad. It means that that was exactly the message that you needed at that time. But now you're ready for the next steps and stages in the next keys. You're ready to unlock the next door because now you've retrained your nervous system from going into those obsessive thoughts. So now you go into the next room and you start testing and seeing, like, hey, if these thoughts are coming up, can I continue to focus on myself and handle my business and also process some of what happened with the divine masculine? And you sort of tiptoe in it. Some of the old feelings and energies may come up, right? Because you're reopening that door, but it doesn't mean you're going to necessarily regress backwards. This is the opportunity to say, okay, I've learned a lot. Where am I now? I'm going to put my toe in the water and sort of see what I'm able to process now. How can I stabilize? What can I learn from those experiences? And the reason I say this is because if the information and the energy is still there, it's still sort of knocking on your door saying, come see me. If you're still having thoughts of the masculine or it comes up over time, this is not a wrong or a bad thing. It just is what it is. And those thoughts and those feelings are still there because there is still something of value for you to learn from those energies. Okay. It was more about getting yourself out of the pattern of being obsessed with that energy and information from that perspective. But now that you have grown and you've embodied more into yourself and your personal responsibility, it's okay to explore the next levels and layers. Okay. I hope this is landing. I hope this makes sense. That is one example, but this is also something that is relevant to every part of our lives and our growth process. Okay. Like you may, we'll use a diet for an example. You may like think that an example, you want to lose weight. So you might go, or in the old way, you may have went to like a fad diet or a specific exercise or something like that. That's not to say there's anything wrong with that, but I guess my point is that may have worked for a time, but then you might not be able to sustain the results. Okay. It may have also given you some of the information and habits that you needed to start exercising or to start thinking about what you were eating, but it may not be the actual full answer of what you are looking for. Does it mean it was wrong or bad? Not necessarily. It gave you what you needed in that time, right? But you might be ready to go now a little bit deeper and actually say find the foods that your body likes versus a specific diet that someone else tells you. Okay. It doesn't mean there was no value in the original structure. It just means the more you trust yourself, the less you need someone else's full structure, and you can start to really tune into yourself. Doesn't make the first thing wrong or bad. It just means you're still growing, my loves. Okay. So I think the main thing is that we get a set of keys, we get a set of information, and it's a piece of our process. It's a piece of our pathway. But it's also very important that along that path, if we start to feel stuck, or if the old things aren't working anymore, it just means we're ready to grow to the next levels, and that you're ready for another part or another key to the next room and to continue your expansion and ascension process. And this became an important topic for me to talk about because there are sometimes those gray areas, especially in these connections. So, an example that's coming up to mind that actually happens quite often on this process is, say there's a divine feminine, a feminine who's been, going through an initiation into these divine love, sacred union energies. And she's embodying into herself and learning to love herself deeper. And she's sort of now in this process of looking at what happened between her and the masculine. And maybe there was some things he mirrored to her that were hurtful or disrespectful, or things that she would not allow to happen to her now in her embodiment, right? But remember, that mirror was there so that she would be inspired to set standards for herself and love herself and not allow that pattern to be in her space, not just with the masculine, but with anybody, family, friends, work. It's really about that embodiment of the standards in your full life, in all of your relationships and experiences. So it might feel like, how can I forgive that process? How am I supposed to forgive that and just forget it? Well, the point is more about understanding that everyone is growing, right? And that those mirrors were there, whether it's your masculine mirror or a parent or a teacher or a neighbor or someone who hurt you or disrespected you in some way, shape, or form along the way. The forgiveness is not about saying, oh, it's okay that you did that. And it's about saying, you know what? I don't align with those energies anymore, and I will not allow that sort of treatment into my life. But I can forgive that it happened. And maybe those people, places, or things could be welcomed back into your life if they've also healed the pattern within themselves. You see what I'm saying? So the forgiveness is about actually allowing the healing within your system to deepen. And you'll probably actually notice a lot of times that when you're thinking about forgiving another person, it's also about the process of forgiving yourself deeper, right? Because maybe at that time when those things happened, you weren't your more embodied self that you are now, right? You can't know what you don't know till you know it. So you also only had the tools and information that you had at that time. And so the new version of you may be a bit protective and be a little bit nervous to forgive the process because, well, what if I let that means I'm letting it back in? But I'm going to ask like that you kind of give it a different perspective. You're not that same version anymore. So you're not letting the old behavior in by forgiving it. What you're doing, or if you decide to, is actually providing yourself with the opportunity to drop in the results of who you are now versus the past version of you. So when you bring in what you have learned to those memories, to those thoughts, and to those experiences, and you think about how you would handle those differently, that can be very supportive to move into the energy of forgiveness for yourself and for the others because you've actually extracted the lesson that was necessary for you to relieve yourself from having those uncomfortable experiences in that way. Okay. Now, you may still have uncomfortable experiences in your life or in your environment at times, but you will notice that you're responding and reacting differently to those. Okay. And this is actually taking me into a question that came in connected to the most recent video that was like, how can you look at like not receiving the results of what you thought you were working for? Okay. So, say you've been working on your divine counterpart connection, you've been working your initiation, you know that you're improving, you know that you're doing better, or at least you feel like you are, but the masculine, divine masculine's not showing up in your day-to-day life. And by some of the things that you've heard in some of the videos, you might think, well, I'm not doing good enough. Or, am I still stuck? But here's a way that you can check. It could be that there's still some things for you to work through. We're all continuously evolving and learning. But there's also another way that you can sort of build your self trust and check in with where you actually are. In how you can do that is sort of take a step back from the divine counterpart process. Take a step back from only thinking about your relationship with the divine masculine. Pan out and start to look at how is your relationship with everyone else in your life? Your parents, your siblings, your aunts, your uncles, your nieces, your nephews, your cousins, your neighbors, your coworkers, the people that you're connected to on social media, how you're operating when you're out in the world. How are you embodying your standards? How are you treating yourself? How are you treating yourself? How are you showing up for yourself and providing for yourself? List out the ways that you're different. List out the ways that you're caring for yourself. Notice and recognize the progress that you have made and how that's impacting everything else around you and the decisions you're making, the choices that you're making, the perspectives that you are gaining. Okay, my loves. Sometimes it's not about attaining only that one specific outcome, right? That was the inspiration for your evolution. But it is not the only indicator that you are progressing. It is not the only indicator that you are evolving and embodying into your beautiful energy. It could be one of them, but perhaps a way to flip it is that the masculine isn't showing up in that way just yet because there's so much more gorgeous energy for you to embody because your potential and capacity as the gorgeous being that you are is needing more space to open up and land and grow and bloom and blossom. Okay. So it's all about our perspective. And it can be both. Part of that next level of growing and blooming and blossoming might be opening a pocket of energy within yourself that you didn't even know was there. And yeah, maybe it'll require a bit of cleanup or some support, right? But there's also going to be gorgeous keys that live within that, jewels and wisdom and life force and more of who you are to come forward, right? So if you're evolving and growing and loving yourself and prioritizing yourself and letting yourself move more deeply into your authenticity and the new ways of being, if the masculine hasn't shown up yet, my loves, it's just because there is more gifts to be blossomed within you. Okay. And I could probably keep going on, but I know I've hit quite a bit within this video. And it's some food for thought to really drop into noticing the perspectives that you're holding. Okay. Yes, we want to hold ourselves accountable. That self reflection and shadow work and the unraveling and dissolving is an important part of it. But also acknowledging what you have embodied and what you have accomplished is also an equally important part of this process because it's the bridging that the trust is built from. Okay. And so when you find yourself in a scenario where you've learned something that was a key that helped you grow, like not focusing on the divine masculine. And then you're sort of growing and evolving, and you find yourself being bombarded or having thoughts or feelings around the divine masculine, you can simply shift it to say, okay, I'm ready to grow to the next levels. I do not have to drop into like an obsession of focus on divine masculine. Now I can look at it for the mirror that it is. What is that connection showing me? What is the memory showing me? And what can I learn from it? Right? It's sort of like having a manual or a review right in front of you. And there might be some times where you see that and you're like, okay, you know what? Right now, that's a little bit too much for me. So you trust yourself and you say, what? I'll look at that maybe in a couple days. Okay. Or maybe I need some support looking at that part of it. Or maybe I am ready to look at this part. Or, you know what? I'm feeling like I don't have any answers that are making sense to how I'm feeling right now. And I'm not finding a video or a person that's quite satisfying what I'm looking for. If that happens, just simply ask your highest self, your connection to source, your heart, right, to help support you in revealing the answer and the support that's going to help you get where you are needing to go. Okay. And then give it space. Okay. If the answer isn't there yet, it's just because it's not time yet. Okay. And that building your trust with you is going to be where you may go down a road or work with a person or watch a video that might actually seem totally unrelated, but it ends up having the answer you were looking for. You know what I mean? Like you could be asking for information about the divine masculine and your connection and how to handle it, and nothing's coming. And so all of a sudden you start going out for walks and walking dogs, and something that happens in your interaction with the dog inspires an answer within you. Do you see what I'm saying? It could be something totally random, but not, right? It's broadening our perspective to allow the universe to send us information from any direction. We do not have to micromanage the universe, right? We can actually let ourselves breathe and allow the universe and our higher selves to send us the answers without needing it to be in that exact moment. Those answers are going to come to you in the divine and perfect timing. Okay. But that trust with yourself is in knowing that you can ask, and it's okay if you don't have the answer, but you know that eventually you're going to receive the information that you need. And also, if you're ever uncertain and things are confusing, one thing that I did, I'll share this with you. When I was going through that and I could see the different potentials, but I wasn't sure, I kept asking to be shown the truth. And the more I kept asking to be shown the truth, not only did more truth evolve and open up within my connection, it actually started showing me a whole bunch of truth about my entire life, other relationships, other experiences, and even about myself. Things that I wasn't seeing about myself started to become much clearer. So the more we embody into our own truth and build that trust with ourselves, regardless if there's anyone else validating it externally, is a very powerful skill to build. And so if you're not fully in that yet, it's okay, right? You can set that as your intention. That my intention is to build more self trust with myself, to be willing to look at the truth of myself in this situation, even if it's uncomfortable. But I just want to have the truth and I want to trust myself. All right. Because as you develop that more and more and more, it becomes easier to trust everything else because you will know that you trust yourself enough to handle every situation to the best of your capacity. Okay. And so you might not need to know every single detail, but once you know you trust yourself, it will be easier to make the moves that work for you. Okay. I'm going to leave it here. I hope it was helpful. I'm going to put my information in the comments. I would love to hear from you. I hope this answered some of the questions that came up from the most recent video. I wish you a very, very beautiful day, and I'll talk to you soon. Much love. Bye.